I must tell you something that's been weighing on my heart. And I need you to really hear this. There are 5 zodiac signs walking among us who are carrying a burden so profound, so ancient, that most people will never understand the true weight of what they hold. These aren't just reliable people. These are the cosmic pillars, the ones who hold up the sky while everyone else sleeps peacefully beneath it. And here's what nobody talks about. This reliability isn't a personality trait. It's a soul assignment. It's written into their energetic DNA. It's the reason they wake up exhausted even after a full night's sleep. It's why they can't walk away even when every fiber of their being is screaming for rest. It's why they feel responsible for things that aren't even their responsibility. Have you noticed this in your own life? That feeling of being the only one who can't afford to fall apart. That sensation of carrying invisible weight that no one else seems to see. That's not your imagination. That's your cosmic assignment revealing itself. Let me be very clear about something before we go further. When I talk about reliability, I'm not talking about people who are simply punctual or who remember birthdays. I'm talking about something far more profound. I'm talking about the people who hold the emotional infrastructure of entire families together. The ones who become the gravitational center that keeps everyone else from spinning into chaos. The ones who absorb the collective anxiety of every room they enter and somehow transmute it into stability. These 5 zodiac signs don't just show up. They show up when showing up costs and everything. They show up when they're running on empty. They show up when no one would blame them for walking away. And this pattern isn't random. It's cosmically encoded. Now, you might be thinking this sounds like a blessing, and in some ways it is. But let me tell you what the astrology textbooks won't tell you. This kind of reliability comes with a price tag that would break most people. It comes with the weight of everyone else's unprocessed emotions. It comes with the exhaustion of being the person everyone leans on but who has nowhere to lean themselves. It comes with a kind of soul fatigue that sleep can't fix. Does this resonate with you? Because if it does, I need you to keep listening. What I'm about to share will help you understand why you are the way you are, and more importantly, how to carry this gift without it destroying you. Let's start with the energetic mechanics of what's actually happening here. When we talk about someone being reliable, we're really talking about energetic consistency. We're talking about someone whose frequency remains stable even when everything around them is in chaos. Think of it like this. Most people are like weather patterns, constantly shifting, responding to every external stimulus. But these 5 signs, they're like mountains. Storms rage around them. Seasons change. Chaos erupts. But they remain fundamentally unmoved. This isn't stubbornness. This is something far more sophisticated. It's an energetic anchoring system that these souls develop over multiple lifetimes. They learn it, through repeated incarnations, how to become the fixed point in a spinning world. And once you become that fixed point, everyone and everything starts to orbit around you. Here's where it gets really interesting. This reliability creates what I call a cosmic dependency loop. People unconsciously recognize these stable frequencies and they gravitate toward them like moths to a flame. Not because they're trying to use these people, but because on a subconscious level, they recognize safety. They recognize home. They recognize the one person who won't abandon them when things get hard. But here's the shadow side that nobody wants to acknowledge. When you become the person everyone depends on, you also become the person who isn't allowed to break. You become the person who has to suppress their own needs because if you fall apart, the entire structure collapses. You become the person who carries everyone else's fear of abandonment in your own nervous system. Have you noticed this pattern in your relationships? That people come to you in crisis but rarely ask how you're doing. That you've become so good at being strong that people forget you might need support too. That's not a coincidence. That's the energetic signature of being a cosmic pillar. Now let me tell you about the first of these 5 signs, and I want you to pay very close attention because this one carries perhaps the heaviest burden of all. We're talking about Capricorn, and before you roll your eyes thinking this is just about their famous work ethic, let me stop you right there. What Capricorn carries goes so much deeper than ambition or responsibility. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, the planet of structure, time, and karmic lessons. But here's what most astrologers miss. Saturn isn't just about discipline. Saturn is about holding form when everything wants to dissolve into chaos. Saturn is about being the container that keeps everything from spilling out and being lost forever. And Capricorn, as Saturn's primary expression, has taken on the cosmic assignment of being that container for everyone around them. Think about the Capricorns in your life. Really think about them. They're the ones who show up to every family crisis with a plan. They're the ones who somehow keep their composure when everyone else is falling apart. They're the ones who take on the role of parent even when they're still children themselves. They're the ones who build the structures that everyone else gets to live inside of. But here's what breaks my heart about Capricorn energy. These souls often had to grow up too fast. They often had to become the adult in situations where the actual adults couldn't hold it together. They learn it early, sometimes devastatingly early, that if they didn't hold things together, everything would fall apart. And that pattern, that childhood wound of premature responsibility, becomes the template for their entire life. I've worked with countless Capricorns who can't remember a time when they weren't carrying something heavy. They can't remember a time when they felt light. They can't remember a time when someone else held the weight for them. And this creates a kind of existential exhaustion that most people can't even comprehend. Here's the thing about Capricorn reliability. It's not optional for them. It's not a choice they make each morning. It's wired into their survival system. They learn it that their value, their safety, their right to exist was contingent on being useful, being responsible, being the one who could handle it. And even when they intellectually know this isn't true, their nervous system still operates from that original programming. Let me give you a specific example. I once worked with a Capricorn woman who was the CEO of a successful company, the primary caretaker for her aging parents, and the emotional support system for her 3 siblings. She came to me because she was having panic attacks, but she couldn't understand why. From the outside, she had everything under control. But when we dug deeper, we discovered that she hadn't taken a full day off in 7 years. She hadn't cried in front of anyone in over a decade. She hadn't asked for help since she was a child. Her body was literally screaming for her to stop. But she couldn't. Because in her mind, if she stopped, if she let go, if she admitted she couldn't handle it all, everything would collapse. Everyone would be disappointed. Everyone would leave. And that fear, that primal terror of being abandoned if she's not useful, was driving her into the ground. Does this sound familiar? Because this is the Capricorn pattern. This is what it means to be cosmically assigned to hold up the sky. You become so identified with being the strong one that you forget you're allowed to be human. You become so good at carrying weight that people forget to check if you're okay under there. But here's what I need Capricorns to understand. And this is crucial. Your reliability is a gift. But it's not supposed to cost you your life. It's not supposed to cost you your health. It's not supposed to cost you your ability to feel joy. The universe didn't assign you to be a martyr. It assigned you to be a master builder. Yes. But you're supposed to build a life that includes your own well-being. Not sacrifice yourself on the altar of everyone else's needs. The Capricorn lesson isn't about learning to be more responsible. You've already mastered that. The Capricorn lesson is about learning that you can be reliable without being self-sacrificing. You can hold space for others without abandoning yourself. You can be the mountain without turning to stone. Now let's talk about the second sign. And this one might surprise you because they don't always get credit for their reliability. We're talking about Cancer. And I know what you're thinking. Isn't Cancer too emotional to be reliable? Isn't Cancer too sensitive? Too moody? Too changeable? And that's exactly the misunderstanding I need to clear up right now. Cancer is ruled by the moon. And yes, the moon is associated with emotions and fluctuation. But here's what people miss. The moon is also the celestial body that controls the tides. The moon is what keeps the earth stable on its axis. The moon is what creates rhythm and cycle and predictability in a chaotic universe. And Cancer, as the moon's primary expression, carries that same function in human relationships. Cancer is reliable in a way that's completely different from Capricorn, but no less profound. Where Capricorn holds up the structural sky, Cancer holds up the emotional sky. Cancer is the one who remembers everyone's pain. Cancer is the one who creates the safe space where people can finally fall apart. Cancer is the one who says, without words, you can bring me your broken pieces and I will hold them until you're ready to put yourself back together. Think about the Cancers in your life. They're the ones who remember your favorite food when you're having a hard day. They're the ones who show up with soup when you're sick. They're the ones who can feel your pain before you even tell them what's wrong. They're the ones who create home, not as a place, but as a feeling of absolute safety. But here's the shadow that Cancer carries, and it's a heavy one. Cancer doesn't just feel their own emotions. They feel everyone's emotions. They're like emotional sponges, absorbing the unprocessed grief, fear, and pain of everyone around them. And unlike other signs who compartmentalize or detach, Cancer can't. They carry it all in their body. They carry it all in their heart. They carry it all in their nervous system. I've worked with Cancer placements who developed physical illness from carrying too much emotional weight that wasn't even theirs. I've seen Cancers who couldn't sleep because they were processing their family's generational trauma in their dreams. I've witnessed Cancers who became so identified with being the emotional caretaker that they forgot they had needs of their own. Here's a specific pattern I see with Cancer energy. They become the designated feeler for entire family systems. In families where emotions are suppressed or denied, Cancer becomes the one who expresses what everyone else is repressing. They cry the tears no one else will cry. They feel the anger no one else will acknowledge. They carry the grief that's been passed down through generations, and this creates an exhausting dynamic where Cancer is always in emotional labor mode. They're always attuned to everyone else's feelings. They're always managing the emotional temperature of every room. They're always making sure everyone else feels safe and seen, while their own emotional needs go completely unmet. Does this resonate with you? Because if you're a Cancer or have strong Cancer placements, I need you to hear this. Your emotional reliability is not a weakness. It's not too much. It's not a burden on others. But it becomes a burden on you when you forget that you're allowed to have boundaries around what you absorb. You're allowed to say, I can witness your pain without taking it into my body. You're allowed to create safety for others without making yourself unsafe in the process. The Cancer lesson isn't about becoming less sensitive. Your sensitivity is your superpower. The Cancer lesson is about learning that you can hold space for others without drowning in their emotions. You can be the safe harbor without becoming the ocean that swallows you whole. Now let's move to the third sign. And this one is going to challenge everything you think you know about reliability. We're talking about Virgo. And I already know what's happening in your mind right now. You're thinking, of course Virgo is reliable. They're perfectionists. They're detail-oriented. They're the ones who get things done. But that surface-level understanding completely misses the profound spiritual assignment that Virgo carries. Virgo is ruled by Mercury. But not the Mercury of Gemini that's all about communication and ideas. This is Mercury in its most refined, most precise, most service-oriented expression. Virgo Mercury is about discernment. It's about seeing what's broken and knowing exactly how to fix it. It's about having the capacity to hold chaos in your hands and organize it into something functional, something beautiful, something that serves. Here's what makes Virgo's reliability so devastating and so necessary. They see the flaws. They see the cracks. They see what everyone else misses. And once they see it, they can't unsee it. They can't walk away from something that's broken when they know they have the capacity to fix it. This isn't about perfectionism in the way people usually understand it. This is about a soul-level compulsion to bring order to chaos, to heal what's wounded, to improve what's broken. Think about the Virgos in your life. They're the ones who notice when you're struggling before you say a word. They're the ones who see the small details that make the difference between something working and something failing. They're the ones who will stay up all night fixing a problem that no one else even noticed was a problem. They're the ones who make everything run smoothly while remaining completely invisible in the process. But here's the shadow that Virgo carries. And it's one of the most painful patterns I've ever witnessed. Virgo becomes reliable by making themselves small. They become indispensable by focusing entirely on what needs to be fixed, what needs to be improved, what needs to be served. And in that process, they completely lose sight of their own needs, their own desires, their own right to exist beyond their usefulness. I worked with a Virgo man who was a nurse, and he told me something that broke my heart wide open. He said, "I don't know who I am when I'm not helping someone. I don't know what I want when I'm not fixing something. I don't know how to just be without having a purpose." And that right there is the Virgo wound. The belief that your value is contingent on your utility. The terror that if you stop serving, stop fixing, stop improving, you'll become irrelevant. You'll become disposable. Here's a specific pattern I see with Virgo energy that nobody talks about. They develop what I call hypervigilance for imperfection. They're constantly scanning their environment for what's wrong, what's broken, what needs attention. And this creates a nervous system that can never rest. Because there's always something that could be better. There's always something that needs fixing. There's always someone who needs help. This hypervigilance often starts in childhood. Many Virgos grew up in environments where they had to be the responsible one, the helpful one, the one who kept things running smoothly. Maybe they had a parent who was overwhelmed, or sick, or absent. Maybe they had siblings they had to take care of. Maybe they learned early that love was conditional on being useful, being good, being perfect. And that childhood pattern becomes the template for every relationship they enter. They become the fixer, the helper, the one who makes everything better for everyone else while their own needs go completely unaccountedly. They become so good at seeing what others need that they become blind to what they need themselves. Let me tell you about a Virgo woman I worked with who was a teacher. She spent her entire day taking care of other people's children, making sure they felt seen and supported and encouraged. Then she'd come home and take care of her own family, making sure everyone had what they needed. Then she'd stay up late grading papers and preparing lessons. And when I asked her, "When do you take care of yourself?" she looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. The concept of self-care wasn't even in her vocabulary. Because in her mind, taking care of herself felt selfish. It felt indulgent. It felt like a betrayal of her purpose. Does this sound familiar? Because this is the Virgo pattern. This is what it means to be reliable to the point of self-erasure. You become so focused on serving others that you forget you're allowed to have needs. You become so good at fixing things that you forget you're not a tool. You're a human being with desires and dreams and a right to rest. But here's what I need Virgo to understand. And this is absolutely crucial. Your ability to see what needs to be fixed is a gift. But you are not responsible for fixing everything you see. You are not responsible for making everyone else's life perfect. You are not responsible for sacrificing your own well-being on the altar of service. The universe didn't assign you to be a servant. It assigned you to be a healer. Yes, but healing starts with yourself. The Virgo lesson isn't about becoming less helpful or less detail-oriented. Those are your gifts. The Virgo lesson is about learning that you can serve others without serving yourself up as a sacrifice. You can be helpful without being self-abandoning. You can fix things without fixing yourself out of existence. Now let's talk about the fourth sign. And this one is going to surprise a lot of people because they're not typically associated with reliability in the traditional sense. We're talking about Scorpio, and I can already hear the objections. Scorpio, intense, secretive, transformative Scorpio. How are they reliable? And that's exactly the misunderstanding I need to address right now. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, the planet of death, rebirth, and transformation. And yes, Scorpio energy is intense. It's deep. Yes, It can be overwhelming. But here's what people miss. Scorpio is reliable in the most profound way possible. They're reliable in crisis. They're reliable when everything is falling apart. They're reliable when everyone else has run away screaming. Scorpio doesn't hold up the sky in calm weather. Scorpio holds up the sky during the apocalypse. They're the ones who show up when your life is in ruins. They're the ones who aren't afraid of your darkness. They're the ones who will walk into your hell with you and help you find your way back out. They're the ones who understand that sometimes things need to die before they can be reborn. Think about the Scorpios in your life. They're the ones you call at 3 in the morning when your world is ending. They're the ones who aren't scared off by your trauma or your pain or your rage. They're the ones who have the capacity to hold the darkest parts of you without flinching. They're the ones who understand that healing isn't pretty. Transformation isn't comfortable. And sometimes love means witnessing someone's complete destruction and staying anyway. But here's the shadow that Scorpio carries. And it's one of the heaviest burdens in the entire Zodiac. Scorpio becomes the designated holder of everyone's darkness. They become the person people bring their secrets to, their shame to, their unprocessed trauma to. And Scorpio, with their incredible capacity for depth and transformation, takes it all on. They hold it. They carry it. They transmute it in their own body. I've worked with Scorpios who have become walking repositories for other people's pain. They're the friend everyone confesses to. They're the family member everyone brings their darkest secrets to. They're the partner who holds space for healing that's so intense it would break most people. And they do this because they have the capacity for it. Because they're not afraid of the dark. Because they understand that sometimes the only way out is through. But here's what happens when Scorpio becomes too reliable in this way. They start to believe that their value lies in their ability to handle what others can't. They start to believe that they're only lovable when they're being the strong one, the deep one, the one who can handle anything. They start to believe that if they show their own vulnerability, if they admit they're struggling, if they ask for support, they'll be abandoned. Let me tell you about a Scorpio client who was a therapist. She spent her days holding space for other people's trauma, helping them process their pain, guiding them through their darkness. And she was brilliant at it. She had this incredible capacity to be present with suffering without trying to fix it or make it go away. But when I asked her who holds space for her darkness, she went completely silent. Because she had convinced herself that she didn't need that. That she could handle her own transformation alone. That asking for support was a sign of weakness. And this is the Scorpio trap. They become so identified with being the one who can handle the intensity that they forget they're allowed to need support too. They become so good at holding space for others that they forget they need someone to hold space for them. They become so comfortable in the dark that they forget they're allowed to ask for light. Here's a specific pattern I see with Scorpio energy that's absolutely crucial to understand. They often experience betrayal or abandonment early in life, usually during a moment of vulnerability. Maybe they opened up to someone and that person used it against them. Maybe they showed their soft underbelly and got hurt. Maybe they trusted someone who proved untrustworthy. And from that wound, they developed a belief system that says, I can only rely on myself. I can only trust myself. I can only be safe if I never need anyone. And that belief system, while it protects them from further betrayal, also isolates them completely. It creates a dynamic where they're always the strong one, always the reliable one, always the one holding everyone else together, but never allowing themselves to be held, never allowing themselves to fall apart, never allowing themselves to need. Does this resonate with you? Because if you're a Scorpio or have strong Scorpio placements, I need you to hear this. Your capacity to hold intensity is a gift, but it's not supposed to be a prison. You're not supposed to carry everyone's darkness alone. You're not supposed to be strong all the time. You're not supposed to transform in isolation. The universe didn't assign you to be a lone wolf. It assigned you to be a guide through the underworld. Yes, but even guides need companions. The Scorpio lesson isn't about becoming less intense or less deep. Your depth is your medicine. The Scorpio lesson is about learning that you can be reliable in crisis without making crisis your entire identity. You can hold space for darkness without drowning in it. You can be the phoenix without burning yourself to ash over and over again. Now let's talk about the fifth and final sign. And this one is going to make complete sense once you understand the energetic mechanics at play. We're talking about Taurus. And before you think this is just about their famous stubbornness or their love of comfort, let me tell you what Taurus really carries. Taurus is ruled by Venus. But not the Venus of Libra that's all about relationships and harmony. This is Venus in its most grounded, most embodied, most stable expression. Taurus Venus is about creating security. It's about building something that lasts. It's about being the unmovable force that everyone else can lean against when the world is shaking. Taurus is reliable in the most fundamental way possible. They're reliable with resources. They're reliable with presence. They're reliable with their physical body and their capacity to show up in material reality, where the other signs hold up different aspects of the sky. Taurus holds up the earth itself. They're the ground beneath everyone's feet. They're the foundation that everything else is built upon. Think about the Taurus placements in your life. They're the ones who always have what you need. They're the ones whose homes feel like sanctuaries. They're the ones who create stability through their sheer presence. They're the ones who don't waver, don't panic, don't abandon ship when things get rocky. They're the ones who say, through their actions more than their words, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. But here's the shadow that Taurus carries, and it's one that often goes completely unrecognized. Taurus becomes reliable by becoming immovable. They become the rock by refusing to flow. They become the foundation by rooting themselves so deeply that they forget they're allowed to grow, to change, to evolve. They become so identified with being stable that they confuse stability with stagnation. I've worked with Taurus placements who have stayed in jobs they hated for decades because they provided security. I've seen Taurus energy that remained in relationships that were slowly killing them because leaving felt too unstable, too risky, too uncertain. I've witnessed Taurus individuals who built entire lives around being the stable one, the reliable one, the one everyone could count on. And in the process, they built a prison they couldn't escape from. Here's a specific pattern I see with Taurus energy that's absolutely heartbreaking. They equate their worth with their ability to provide. They believe that if they can't offer stability, resources, or physical comfort, they have nothing of value to give. And this creates a dynamic where they work themselves into exhaustion trying to be the provider, the one who makes sure everyone else has what they need, while their own needs for rest, for pleasure, for joy get completely ignored. Let me tell you about a Taurus woman I worked with who owned a successful bakery. She woke up at 4 in the morning every single day to bake fresh bread. She worked 7 days a week. She never took vacations. She never closed the shop, even on holidays, because she knew people depended on her. Her customers relied on her. Her employees needed the income, and she carried all of that responsibility in her body until her body literally gave out. She ended up in the hospital with completed renal exhaustion, and even then, her first thought was about who would open the bakery the next morning. Does this sound familiar? Because this is the Taurus pattern. This is what it means to be so reliable that you forget you're allowed to rest. You become so identified with being the provider that you forget you're allowed to receive. You become so committed to being the stable one that you forget stability isn't supposed to mean never moving, never changing, never allowing yourself to be vulnerable. But here's what I need Taurus to understand, and this is absolutely essential. Your reliability is a gift, but it's not supposed to cost you your vitality. You're not supposed to work yourself into the ground. You're not supposed to sacrifice your own pleasure and joy on the altar of everyone else's security. The universe didn't assign you to be a beast of burden. It assigned you to be an embodiment of abundance. Yes, but abundance includes your own well-being, your own rest, your own right to enjoy the fruits of your labor. The Taurus lesson isn't about becoming less stable or less grounded. Those are your superpowers. The Taurus lesson is about learning that you can be reliable without being rigid. You can provide for others without depleting yourself. You can be the foundation without cementing yourself in place so firmly that you can't move when movement is necessary. Now, here's what I need all 5 of these signs to understand. And this is the most important thing I'm going to say in this entire conversation. Your reliability is not a flaw. It's not a weakness. It's not something you need to fix or get rid of. But it becomes toxic when it's not balanced with self-preservation. It becomes destructive when you confuse being reliable with being self-sacrificing. It becomes dangerous when you believe that your value is contingent on how much you can carry for others. Let me be very clear about something. The universe didn't assign you to be a martyr. It didn't assign you to destroy yourself in service of others. It didn't assign you to hold up the sky until you collapse under the weight. What the universe assigned you to do is to be a pillar. Yes. But pillars need foundations. Pillars need maintenance. Pillars need support structures of their own. Here's the truth that nobody wants to tell you. You can't hold up the sky if you're not standing on solid ground yourself. You can't be reliable for others if you're not reliable for yourself first. You can't give from an empty cup. And I know you've heard that phrase a million times. But I need you to really feel it. Really understand it. Really let it sink into your bones. Because here's what happens when you keep giving from empty. You don't just burn out. You don't just get tired. You start to resent the very people you're trying to help. You start to feel bitter about the gift that once brought you joy. You start to see your reliability as a curse instead of a blessing. And that resentment, that bitterness, that exhaustion, it poisons everything. It poisons your relationships. It poisons your sense of self. It poisons your connection to your own purpose. I've seen it happen over and over again. The Capricorn who becomes so resentful of their responsibilities that they sabotage their own success. The Cancer who becomes so overwhelmed by everyone's emotions that they shut down completely and can't feel anything anymore. The Virgo who becomes so critical and perfectionist I see that they push everyone away. The Scorpio who becomes so isolated in their intensity that they can't let anyone in. The Taurus who becomes so stuck in their patterns that they miss every opportunity for growth and transformation. And here's the tragedy. None of this is necessary. None of this has to happen. Because reliability doesn't have to equal self-destruction. Being the strong one doesn't have to mean never showing weakness. Holding space for others doesn't have to mean abandoning yourself. So what's the solution? How do you maintain your reliability without sacrificing yourself? How do you continue to be the pillar without crumbling under the weight? Let me give you the framework that will change everything. First, you need to understand that boundaries are not betrayals. Setting a limit on what you can carry is not the same as abandoning people. Saying no is not the same as being unreliable. In fact, the most reliable people are the ones who know their limits and communicate them clearly. Because when you say yes to everything, you eventually become unable to follow through on anything. When you take on more than you can handle, you end up letting everyone down, including yourself. Second, you need to recognize that asking for help is not a weakness. It's not a failure. It's not proof that you're not strong enough. Asking for help is actually the most mature, most self-aware thing you can do. It's saying, I know my limits and I'm not going to pretend I don't have them. It's saying, I value this relationship enough to be honest about what I need. It's saying, right, I trust you enough to let you see me as human, not just as a pillar. Third, you need to understand that rest is not optional. It's not a luxury. It's not something you earn after you've done enough. Rest is a biological necessity. Your nervous system needs downtime to process and integrate. Your body needs sleep to repair and restore. Your mind needs space to wander and dream. And when you deny yourself rest, you're not being strong. You're being self-destructive. You need to learn to receive. This is especially hard for these 5 signs because you're so identified with being the giver, the provider, the one who has it all together. But receiving is not a sign of weakness. Receiving is what allows the energy to flow. When you only give and never receive, you create stagnation. You create depletion. Receiving is how you refill your cup so you can continue to give from overflow instead of from empty. And fifth, you need to remember that you are not responsible for other people's feelings, choices, or lives. You can support them. You can love them. You can show up for them. But you cannot save them. You cannot fix them. You cannot live their lives for them. And when you try to, you're not helping them. You're actually preventing them from developing their own strength, their own resilience, their own capacity to handle their own lives. Here's what I want you to do right now, especially if you're one of these 5 signs. I want you to put your hand on your heart and feel your own heartbeat. Feel the rhythm of your own life force. Feel the fact that you are alive. You are here. You are worthy of care and attention and love. Not because of what you do for others, but simply because you exist. And I want you to ask yourself this question. When was the last time someone took care of me the way I take care of everyone else? When was the last time someone showed up for me the way I show up for everyone else? When was the last time someone held space for my pain, my exhaustion, my needs, the way I hold space for theirs? If you can't remember, or if the answer makes you want to cry, that's your sign. That's your wake-up call. That's the universe telling you that something needs to change. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you deserve better. You deserve to be held the way you hold others. You deserve to be supported the way you support others. You deserve to be seen and valued for who you are, not just for what you do. And here's the beautiful thing that happens when you start to shift this pattern. When you start to set boundaries, ask for help, prioritize rest, learn to receive, and release the responsibility for things that aren't yours to carry, you don't become less reliable. You actually become more reliable. Because you're operating from a place of fullness instead of depletion. You're giving from overflow instead of from empty. You're showing up as your whole self instead of as a depleted version of yourself that's barely holding it together. The people who truly love you, the people who truly value you, they don't want you to sacrifice yourself for them. They don't want you to destroy yourself in service of their needs. They want you to be healthy and happy. And if there are people in your life who only value you when you're giving, serving, fixing, and providing, those are not your people. Those are energy vampires who are taking advantage of your beautiful, generous heart. You are not here to be used up. You are not here to be a resource that gets depleted and discarded. You are not here to hold up the sky until you collapse. You are here to be a pillar. Yes, but a pillar that stands on solid ground. That has support structures of its own. That knows when to ask for reinforcement. That understands that even the strongest structures need maintenance and care. To every Capricorn reading this, your worth is not contingent on your productivity. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to play. You are allowed to be human instead of a machine. To every Cancer reading this, you are allowed to have boundaries around what emotions you absorb. You are allowed to witness pain without taking it into your body. You are allowed to create safety for yourself, not just for everyone else. To every Virgo reading this, you are not a tool. You are not here to fix everything you see. You are allowed to exist beyond your usefulness. You are allowed to be imperfect and still be worthy of love. To every Scorpio reading this, you are allowed to need support. You are allowed to be vulnerable. You are allowed to transform in community instead of in isolation. You are allowed to ask for light when you're in the dark. To every Taurus reading this, you are allowed to change. You are allowed to flow. You are allowed to prioritize your own pleasure and rest. You are allowed to receive instead of always being the provider. Your reliability is a gift to this world. The way you show up, the way you hold space, the way you create stability and safety and structure for others. It matters. It's needed. It's valuable. But it's not supposed to cost you everything. It's not supposed to destroy you. It's not supposed to be the reason you can't sleep at night. The reason your body is breaking down. The reason you've forgotten what joy feels like. You are allowed to be reliable and rested. You are allowed to be strong and supported. You are allowed to hold up the sky while standing on solid ground. You're allowed to be the pillow while also being human. And anyone who tells you otherwise, anyone who demands that you sacrifice yourself for their comfort, anyone who makes you feel guilty for having needs of your own, they don't deserve access to your beautiful, generous, reliable heart. The world needs your reliability, but the world also needs you to be whole, healthy, and alive.